Greetings and welcome to the introduction to astronomy. In this week's special topic in astronomy, we are going to talk about the semi-major axis and find out what that means. So what is the semi-major axis? And a semi-major axis is, by definition, is half of the long axis of an ellipse. So the entire longest axis from here to here would be called the major axis. The semi-major axis would be half of that, or the distance from the center to either the aphelion or perihelion point. It doesn't matter because the distance is the same. This would be the center of the ellipse. And you could measure this as the semi-major axis, but it would be exactly the same as this side because it is just half of that major axis. Now, what does it mean? Well, it really is the average distance between the two objects that are orbiting one another. So if we were to talk about the moon orbiting Earth, that would be the average distance between Earth and moon. And because the orbits in the solar system are all elliptical, they will have times where an object is closer to another and times when an object is farther away. And those are, for objects orbiting the sun, called perihelion and aphelion. So when we look at this specifically for Earth, we have the average distance between Earth and sun. So sometimes we're a little bit closer because the sun being here at perihelion, the distance is smaller than at aphelion. But the semi-major axis kind of averages all that out. So for the Earth, it's about 150 million kilometers, or about 93 million miles. And that is what we call the semi-major axis. So it's half the major axis. Now you might imagine there is also a thing called the semi-minor axis. And the semi-minor axis would also go through the center point, but would go along the smallest axis of the ellipse. Now this really does not have a meaning in astronomy, but it does exist there as well. So a semi-minor axis would be just half the minor axis. Now what you can imagine what happens if you have a circular orbit. If things orbit in a circle, then the semi-major axis would be the radius, because in that case there would be no aphelion or perihelion. Everything would always be the same distance from the sun. So if the Earth had a perfectly circular orbit, you would have the Earth always being the same distance. Right now we do have an elliptical orbit, meaning that the Earth is a little bit closer to the sun in January and a little bit farther from the sun in July. So that's when we happen to reach our perihelion, which as of the recording of this video was just a few days ago. And the aphelion will be about 6 months later than that. So let's go ahead and finish up and look at what we've looked at in our summary here. So what we looked at was the semi-major axis, which is the distance between the center of an ellipse to a point on the ellipse that is along the long axis of the ellipse. And astronomically speaking, that is the average distance between the two objects that are orbiting, such as Earth and Sun or Earth and Moon. And for Earth, it is the average distance, say, between the Earth and the sun. And we also call this the astronomical unit, which is the average distance between the Earth and the sun, or the semi-major axis of Earth's orbit. So that concludes this special topic on the semi-major axis. We'll be back again next week for another special topic in astronomy. So until then, have a great day, everyone, and I will see you in class.